Rickey Gibson enters the transfer portal. Today's tough question will be announced here momentarily, but let's just go ahead and throw it out there. Why? Why would Rickey Gibson decide to enter the transfer portal? Jimmy, I'm curious how the news hit you, because here's a young man who could be in the position to be the number one cornerback with Jermod McCoy. I think he's going to be out for some of the season, but they continue to say he'll be back for the season. It's just a very curious move, very curious timing right before spring practice begins.
Money. It's all about money. It's all about how much can I get in the portal. He probably found out that somebody else was making as much or more money than he was making. He felt like he should probably make as much or more than they were making. And that's what it's, what else could it possibly be other than I'm trying to negotiate to get more money on an NIL deal. So to me, although I don't know it 100%, it certainly seems pretty obvious that the only reason he'd enter the portal as a returning starter on a college football playoff team, the only reason he'd enter the portal is to try to negotiate more money.
Caleb, you pretty much said the same thing. You want to chime in here? Because I can't argue. I could throw out other possibilities, but I don't feel confident about any of them.
Yeah, no pun intended, my money is on money. I think this is a Mike Matthews situation from earlier in the all season when Mike Matthews entered the portal and came back. I don't know if you guys think this. I think he's actually going to come back. I think he realizes Tennessee needs him because Jermod McCoy is banged up. He knows how badly Tennessee needs him. And I think this is a negotiating ploy. We're going to talk a little bit later in the show, Jimmy, but I mean, I want to get your thoughts on this just now because we already have you. But, you know, there was a report that came out yesterday. This is one of the reasons schools are canceling spring games, we read from On3, is that tampering now in college football is so prevalent that it's either tamper or fall behind at this point. And so and agents are getting involved. So my guess is someone got in Rickey Gibson's ear and said, hey, you can negotiate a much higher price because Tennessee really, really, really needs you. So why don't you use this as leverage?
I think that's exactly what transpired. No other explanation at this point makes sense to me. So, and he's not the only one that's doing this, but yeah, I think that's it. And look, Tennessee needs him. So how much more are they willing to pay than what they're already paying? Here's the other thing too about this. And I was just reading today where somebody said, well, now they're going to revenue sharing, they're going to have contracts. They've always had contracts. They have multi-year contracts. The athletic director told me that more than 40% of the football players a year ago, this is going in last year, had multi-year contracts. The problem is the multi-year contracts are not binding. So they can leave at any time. You know, I'm told, depending on who you want to listen to, Nico Iamaleava has a 3 or 4 year contract. The person I trust most said 4 years. But he could break it at any time because it's not binding. He can leave and get more money to go to Miami or somewhere else if he wants to, and there's no penalty. So to me, a contract is, I can't say completely worthless, but it's almost worthless in favor of the football player or the athlete if it's not a binding contract, because the school is going to have to honor it. But the player can leave whenever he wants to negotiate a better deal with another school.
Jimmy, I'm completely with you on that. I don't know what can be done to fix this other than, and I wrote a column about this, other than the players need a union so that there is some sort of negotiation between the two parties. And I know a lot of people are anti-union out there on our message board. I'm not saying union in every case. I'm just saying union in college football, because you have to be able to negotiate on both sides to have binding contracts that say you can't go to another SEC school or you can't do this or that. But I don't know that anybody has made that push for that to happen.
I don't either. Now, if somebody makes that push, let's say, let's just take Tennessee out of the equation. Let's say Ole Miss makes that push to make it binding. And a player says, well, wait a minute. I can go to Mississippi State or I can go to Alabama or Georgia and their contract's not binding. Why would I go to your school when I have an opportunity to renegotiate every year to get more money? So I think it's going to be difficult for a school to enforce a binding contract unless all the other schools agree to it. And to unionize, it's going to be interesting to see if they can get there. And you're talking about football only, right? Because
I guess. I mean, I get some basketball schools. I don't know. Really don't know what I'm talking about.
well, the in football it would be there's a part of me that thinks it's easier to manage in football because you only have 130, 140 schools roughly. Basketball, you got 350 or so. Now, in basketball, you're dealing mostly with 13 players. In football, you're dealing with 85. So when you add up the numbers, there's probably not a whole lot of difference in the numbers. But I think it's going to be really hard to get a group to agree on becoming unionized because they're going to look at it like, no, wait a minute. If we unionize this thing, we don't want to be restricted on our potential earnings. So I'm not sure that they would agree to go in that direction. Right now, they hold all the cards, right? And I don't know how much of that they're willing to give up. I think there needs to be a cap in some way, some form or fashion. I think there needs to be accountabilities where you can't become a free agent every year. Well, but will it stand up in court? I don't know.
All right, a couple of comments I want to post up there. General Ursa says time to pony up. And then Derek says talking kids away from the cliff is getting ridiculous. I agree. So I want to ask Jimmy this, the second part of today's tough question. And that will be, what would you do if you're Josh Heupel? And it's brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott.
Jimmy, we don't know the exact dollar figures, but I'll throw this at you. If you're Josh Heupel, what's your mindset with Rickey Gibson? Because you really, really need him, especially with McCoy's injury. But there's a part of me that just wants to say kick rocks because you do it right before spring practice. What would be your mindset? We obviously don't know how much he's going to get paid, but.
Well, I would be concerned about it. You need to keep him, but do you need to break the bank to keep him? So now define that. I don't know. Just pick numbers. If he's making $100,000 in NIL money, I have no idea what he's making, but if he's making $100,000 in NIL and now he's asking for $500,000, he walks. I'm not paying him that. Now, if he wants to go to 125 or 150, I think that would be more manageable. And again, those are hypothetical numbers. I'm just trying to make a point.
Right.
About I would bend a little bit to keep him, but I'm not going to destroy the balance of what I'm paying other people. I'm not going to pay him out of what you might consider fair market value. So it'll be interesting to see if they can reach an agreement.
It's insane.
I mean, this is it. Jimmy, how much do you think, and this is has got to be a factor. How aware would Tennessee be if another school is offering Rickey Gibson an absurd amount of money? Is it possible that Rickey Gibson is like hinting to Tennessee, well, maybe this other school is offering me a lot of money, but nobody's really offering him that much money, and Tennessee just has to guess that they're not and bank on it?
Yeah, I think that, and see, this might not be just Rickey Gibson. This might be his dad, his agent, his mother, his advisor, whoever. And they might come forth and say, hey, we've got an offer of $250,000 from Kentucky, and if you don't pay it, we're going. And now Tennessee is like, well, let's prove that. We see this negotiating coaches' contracts all the time, don't we? Where the agent floats out the name of, hey, these schools were interested in John Doe when they weren't, but they throw it out there so that the school says, oh, well, we got to match that. And there's no proof that other school was interested in that person. So we've seen that with coaches, and now we're seeing it, I think, with players. But it would be hard, I think, for Tennessee to find out an exact number. Rickey Gibson or his representatives could say a number, but do we really know what that number is?
No, I don't. And here's what I would do. If this evolution of NIL, I'm putting myself ahead of the curve, Jimmy. What do you think about that? I'm
You
way
always
ahead.
do.
Yeah, I always do. Okay. Here are my thoughts. We hear about all this money going into, let's just pick a school, Notre Dame, right? We hear about their NIL fund is just blown up because they have a lot of money and guys that are there, or guys and gals that are very passionate about football. So why can't Notre Dame or whoever that school might be that has more NIL money than anybody else, why can't they go to a young man and put it in a contract? We'll give you a little bit more money on the front end. If you're going to get 100,000 from one school, we'll give you 150, but you're going to sign this 3-year contract like Nico did. I mean, why can't some school just tie up their entire roster?
Well, they could, but the only way to do it is to make it a binding contract. And that's where the issue comes in, because
But why
if Notre
can't
Dame's the only school that has a binding contract, then they're going to have difficulty signing these players because other schools are not going to have a binding contract.
So let me make sure that I got this right. They're not binding contracts as I see it because this is all new. It's not some NCAA rule, right?
Correct. It's
Okay.
whatever deal you make with the collective.
Jump in there, Caleb. I see you getting ready.
Yeah. A couple of things I want to jump into. So we all agree on the main reason Rickey Gibson's leaving, on the reason we think. Let me throw out some
Put my money
less.
on it.
Yes, exactly. Let's throw out some less likely possible scenarios, and I just want to see how possible you guys think this is. So, okay, let me throw this one out. What if with Jamal McCoy being hurt, Josh Heupel and the Tennessee coaching staff are targeting other cornerbacks in the transfer portal, and Rickey Gibson took that personally? How possible is it that he left over that?
It's possible.
Yeah,
Dave, what do you think?
I mean, I think it's possible, but I don't think it's very likely.
All right, so what about this one? What if Rickey Gibson likes how being the number 2 cornerback elevates his profile because he guards the less talented receiver, and he doesn't want to be a number 1 cornerback because he's worried about how it'll make him look on the field, and so he's bolting since Jamal McCoy's hurt?
Okay, possible, yes. Highly unlikely, because think about it. Football players typically are very confident in themselves. And Rickey Gibson could improve his stock if he plays as the number 1 cornerback and guards Ryan Williams of Alabama. He could also hurt his stock if he guards Ryan Williams and gets torched for 10 catches and 200 yards. So that's
what I mean. So what if he's running from that moment is what I'm saying. What if he's scared of that moment?
Yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, that's possible. But how many cornerbacks that play that position run from the moment? I mean, they have to be a cocky group of players who think they're better than everybody, and they're always chirping, right, at receivers, and receivers are chirping back. So I think there's a certain confidence level that comes with the position at cornerback or receiver, to where I think it's unlikely either one of those positions would back away and say, I'm not good enough to be the number 1 receiver. I'm not good enough to be the number 1 cornerback. So I don't want to be put in that position. I think that's unlikely, but it is possible.
Well, I'll throw another one at you. What if he's heard from coaches that are tampering that say Willie Martinez is not getting you the best prepared for the NFL?
Well, yeah, that's possible as well.
Yeah, it's a very strange situation. Would he transfer, Jimmy, in the middle of the semester? I mean, how would that? Do they still go to class? Do players still go to class?
Oh, I don't think they do. I think they've made a mockery of that. I think if they really dove into it, there's no way in the world, and there have been players that have done this, that you could play at 5 schools in 5 years and all of your credits transfer. There's no way. So I think there are a whole bunch of, quote, ineligible academically, close quote, players that are on rosters because nobody wants to challenge the eligibility academically. They made a farce of that. So now it doesn't make any sense to transfer. Well, I don't know how you would transfer right now and get enrolled at another school.
I don't either. But if I want him there for spring practice if I'm another school.
Yeah, I do too. So is there a school that doesn't start classes until February 25th? Maybe you can sneak into that school. I think what he would likely do is just stay at Tennessee until the semester ends and then transfer to his new destination. That's what I think he would do. But I'm with you. If I'm Florida State and I've reached a deal with Rickey Gibson, I want him in as soon as I want him to go through spring practice.
And I wasn't taking a shot at Willie Martinez. Derek pointed out that he has put out pros and developed them. So, but I just know of other situations in which players didn't like a position coach, and had they been able to transfer, they would have. But again, the timing seems to be all about money.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Can I ask both you guys a quick ball question? Y'all have covered a lot more practices than I have in my life. So, 4 cornerbacks are coming into this class. One's a 4-star, but I think Tennessee's getting better with their recruiting. So you would have to assume they're better than cornerbacks in the past they've recruited. How easy is it at the cornerback position for a player to step in as a freshman relative to other positions? Is it closer to like stepping in as a running back or stepping in as an offensive lineman, which that's like the gap to me of experience versus you can step in as a freshman?
Caleb, I think it's more like a running back.
Oh, too.
Because you can say, as a cornerback, and you're playing man coverage, you got this guy. Go guard him. So I think it's easier, more comparable to a running back than an offensive lineman. Offensive lineman, also, there's the physical strength aspect of that. There's the technique. There's the ability to be cohesive with your teammates on the offensive line. But as a cornerback, if you're playing man coverage, go get that guy, and so it lessens your responsibilities. So yes, I think as a cornerback, that's one of the positions you can play the quickest in college.
So
I agree with that. And here's another possibility. Maybe the incoming freshman corners showed up and he was like, man, they're super athletic. I can't play here. Again, we're just throwing out goofy possibilities. Go ahead, Caleb.
Yeah, so I mean, we're saying that could give Tennessee a little more leverage with 4 cornerbacks in this recruiting class that are stepping in the spring to work with this team. I was just throwing that out there.
Well, it could be that that Rickey Gibson has looked at these cornerbacks and thought, my playing time might get cut some, or maybe he found out that one of these 4-star cornerbacks was making X amount of money, and he's like,
No.
if you're paying him this, I want that.
Yep.
So
I got no argument with that.